Osamu Tezuka's 1953 manga Astro Boy and his 1963 anime adaptation exist as arguably the most influential anime and manga ever created, yet the 1949 manga that inspired it and its later 2001 anime adaptation are now left in comparative obscurity. In this video, we shall discuss the 48-year-long story of how Astro Boy's predecessor inspired and then later succeeded the legacy of Astro Boy. Astro Boy, with his superpowered adventures, can be considered one of Japan's very first superheroes. Its release immediately brought manga into the modern age. Astro's regular victories against ever larger opponents paved the way for more young shonen protagonists to do the same. His strength, measured through horsepower, first 100,000, later a million, also shows an early precursor of shonen power levels. One of Astro Boy's most popular arcs, The World's Strongest Robot, would see Astro and 7 of the world's strongest robots fight off against a hostile enemy seeking the title for himself. Readers at the time would tune in weekly to see Astro and other robots face off against this gargantuan threat. It was an action spectacle, but 50 years later it was reimagined by Naoki Urasawa as a mystery thriller. Urasawa choosing to emphasize its sci-fi themes such as, what does it mean to be human? The Astro Boy manga was immensely popular with Japanese audiences, selling over 100 million copies. It is one of only 22 manga to have achieved this, and is 16 years older than the next manga to do so. It ended up receiving one of the earliest known live-action adaptations in the 1959 Mighty Atom series and Japan's second TV anime in 1963. Astro's success would go global when in the summer of 1963, Tezuka traveled across the Pacific to sign contracts with America's NBC network to air Astro Boy in the States. As the genre of science fiction was still quite young in the late 1940s and 50s, Astro Boy ended up being one of the earliest majorly successful science fiction works. It's not just an influential manga, but also a foundational science fiction work. It was many Japanese people's introduction to the genre after all. As a result, Astro Boy's appeal was not limited to just action, but was also about the wonder of technology. Many of Astro Boy's themes can be traced 14 years prior to a work that Tezuka earlier penned, this work remaining obscure to all but the most die-hard Tezuka fans. Ideas around robots' rights, what does it mean to be human, and how does technology affect the role of humans in the workforce? These ideas were the heart of Tezuka's Metropolis. World-renowned scientist Dr. Lawton has just made a breakthrough in the research into artificial cells. Duke Red tasks him with the creation of an artificial being. After noticing the Duke's plans to exploit his creation, Dr. Lawton fakes his death, taking the newly created Michi with him. Despite trying his hardest to live a normal life, it is made clear to Michi that she is different from other children. The reasons for this is only revealed much later in the story, but its weight incites a great rage into Michi, resulting in a revolution to destroy humanity for good. Themes about robot rights that were lightly touched upon through Duke Red's exploitations of artificial beings would be fleshed out in Astro Boy. Within Michi's loving relationship with Dr. Lawton, we can also see the early foundations of Astro's relationship with Professor Ochanomizu. Curiously enough, this story was itself inspired by another work. Sort of. Fritz Lang's 1927 epic and cinematic masterpiece Metropolis would be the namesake and inspiration for Tezuka's 1949 manga. Tezuka had never seen the film, and his only connection was that he had seen a picture of its poster with the robot girl Maria. This inspired the creation of Michi, but their similarities end there. Set in a futuristic city sharply divided between the working-class laborers and the rich elite, the son of the city's master falls in love with a working-class prophet who promises the coming of a mediator to reconciliate between the two groups. Her appearance is later stolen by a mad scientist intent on causing chaos with his Machine Man. Fritz Lang's 1927 masterpiece is a part of the German expressionist movement of the silent film era. These films rejected the shackles of realism in favor of over-the-top performances and surreal set designs. Even within this subgenre and silent cinema as a whole, Lang's work stands out as an epic. At over 2.5 hours, its visual spectacle still amazes today. It also has what is the most contrasting and shocking piece of trivia I've found in my career to date. Lang's film, due to its quality, would go on to have many references in pop culture, such as its Machine Man being the basis of C-3PO in Star Wars. Due to its age and country of origin, Hitler had both seen and was a fan of Metropolis. On that basis, it was requested that Lang should make Nazi propaganda films, to which he declined and fled the country. As a result of this success, the manga that this film would unintentionally inspire holds this bizarre position where both the work that preceded it and the works that came after it were both met with acclaim and are both pillars of their respective medium. yet the 1949 manga would fade into obscurity for another 52 years until one of Tezuka's former proteges, and at the time young fans, would revisit this story. 48 years after its creation, Astro Boy would see its inspiration adapted into the medium of anime, 38 years after Astro Boy had itself received its own anime. This adaptation was under the same name, Metropolis. The 2001 film had a curious production. It was directed by Rintaro, a veteran animator and long-term collaborator of Tezuka's. Rintaro actually began his career working on the original Astro Boy 1963 anime at Tezuka's animation studio, Mushi Productions. When looking to develop this work, he would enlist the help of mangaka and film director Katsuro Otomo. Otomo had grown up on the works of Tezuka such as Astro Boy and Metropolis, and given this opportunity, he would then develop the screenplay for this film. Produced by Studio Madhouse, this film had a budget of 1.5 billion yen, equivalent to $9 million today. This meant that at the time it was the most expensive anime film up until then, surpassing Otomo's Akira in 1988. It would then later be surpassed again by Otomo's Steam Boy in 2004. Duke Red, Metropolis's wealthiest citizen, celebrates the completion of the ziggurat. Meanwhile, Japanese private detective Mr. Mustachio and his nephew Kenichi Shikishima travel to Metropolis to apprehend the rogue scientist, Dr. Lawton. Unknown to them is the fact that Duke Red has hired Lawton to secretly build a highly advanced android modeled after his deceased daughter. This film adaptation maintains many of the same plot beats and characters as the manga, but many additions are made to bring it to the modern day. Characters such as Dr. Lawton are reimagined as international criminal and is characterized as a mad scientist. His relationship with Tima is in stark contrast to Michi in the manga. Whereas Michi was his adoptive daughter, Tima is merely his greatest invention. Tima manages to somehow feel more innocent than her manga counterpart. Recently born into the world, she's struggling to navigate her place within it. A new connection is drawn up between her and Duke Red, who no longer has her created purely as a tool, but she's the replacement for his lost child, much like Astro Boy was for Dr. Tenma. But the most interesting addition is Rock. Already a well-established character in the Tezuka mythos, in the film he is a war orphan adopted by Duke Red. His jealousy at the creation of Tima adds an extra layer of tension to the story. Though a new addition to the Metropolis universe, in many ways he is much the same as his Tezuka counterpart. On a narrative level, the film builds upon ideas of classism and racism that were lightly hinted at in the manga. The titular city's fancy exterior is contrasted against the hidden depths of the lower class, its success built on robot labor. As a result, there is a tenuous relationship between robots and the lower class who scapegoat robots as their reason for unemployment and poverty. No matter the age, no matter the time, there is always some fear around technology taking people's jobs. I'm sure the donkey was similarly crossed with the wheel when it was invented. In Metropolis, the civil unrest culminates in revolution. Unhappy with the Duke's popularity and influence, the nation's president and its mayor conspire with working-class revolutionaries to seize power for themselves. However, they are betrayed by the military commander, revealed to be loyal to Duke Red. With this newfound power, the Duke imposes martial law to suppress the revolution and position himself as leader of Metropolis. Revolution is no new idea in Metropolis and originates in Lang's 1927 film. Lang's film is an explicit depiction of social revolution, with its working class being the ones exploited by the ruling class, not its machines. As a result, the 2001 film pays several homages to Lang's classic, such as the stratification of its social classes. In Lang's film, the working class are eventually rallied to revolt against the ruling class by the Machine Man. In Tezuka's 1949 manga, its narrative is a cautionary tale on man's unregulated pursuit of technological development. Through rallying behind Michi, robots undertake their own revolution and destroy the world of man. Its ideas of robot struggle were built upon in Astro Boy. In Astro Boy, robots were legally recognized as sentient life forms, going so far as to group themselves into families. Despite this classification, prejudice and bigotry are still rampant and act as fuel for conflict. Many of Astro Boy's opponents are motivated by this mistreatment of humans, their rage paralleling Michi's. Explored in its predecessors, it is my opinion that these ideas of revolution were fully realized in the 2001 film, whose revolution takes place twice, the second time being for the robots. What makes Tima different from other robots is that she's so human, sort of like Astro. While other robots are presented as crude tools to be used and discarded, Tima is one to be admired, but after her internal circuitry is exposed, her identity as a robot is revealed.
私は人間なのですか？あのかわいそうなロボットたちと同じ機械なのですか？
Horrified, Tima goes insane, causing her implanted programmer to take control. She physically integrates with the Ziggurat Tower and begins commanding all robots around the world to annihilate humanity as punishment for abusing them. Rather than a physical show of strength, the climax of Tima's rage is done through the visual imagery of destruction of the world of man. It could be considered a tragic ending, as the agency of Tima is completely removed from her, unlike in Metropolis' manga. However, the film sidesteps this tragic ending, where in the manga she is killed before she can complete her revenge. Following the destruction of the city of Metropolis, parts of Tima are seen in the wreckage of the city. 2001's Metropolis ends on a hopeful note of being able to rebuild something better from the rubble of what was lost. This 74-year-long story is an interesting case study on the creative process and the power of inspiration. It's a very unique approach to adaptation, and one that I wish could be done more, and for more works, specifically Astro Boy, who I think has some fascinating stories on robot rights that need to be re-examined. This adaptation is a work that truly we couldn't have gone earlier, although attempts might have been made to do so.
いやこれはね虫プロの作品の中で長編がいっぱい当時できてきますよね。あの時に次の企画会議で企画会議ってあって何かないかって言われて、僕は手塚さんの作品だったらあの時2つ出したんですよね。一つはゼロマンっていうのがあったんですよ。それとメトロポリス、どっちかっつうとメトロポリスの方がなんか自分の感覚には合ってたんで、先生メトロポリスやってあんなものダメだって言われたんですよ。でダメな理由ってのは何だったか分かんないですけど、でも当時は多分今になると分かるのは手塚さんとすれば本当に偉大な手塚治虫のスタート時期の作品ですよね。多分本人の中では絵が完成されてないしストーリーも完成されてないっていうことで、あんなものは自分の中ではやることはないって多分そう思ったんじゃないかと思うんですよね。
It was only 74 years after the first pillar of this story was released that it could be finally completed.